Hello and welcome to the program tonight. And we will be discussing the national budget, and we're talking about the Liberian national budget. And tonight, Jensen will be hosting that, and we are waiting for him to come on the broadcast. Meanwhile, we have with us tonight the Honorable Boyka S. Kamara. He's a former finance minister, and we have with us um, Mr. Alexander Coffey, and we'll just give them time to say an opening statement while we await Mr. Jensen to join us. Honorable Mayor, you are muted, so we want to start with you. Can you just introduce yourself?
Oh, thank you, Madam Blay. To our viewing audience, I'm Boyma Eskamar, a Liberian, a public servant, still serving the people. And I believe, just to say greetings to you all, those in Liberia, special greetings to all of you, our brothers and sisters in the motherland, and those in the diaspora. It's an honor and a humbling duty for us to appear at this point in time to share in our perspective on the proposed fiscal year 2022 national budget of the Liberian government. And I'm humbled to be invited by you, Madam Blay, and the entire 2A radio family. I'm humbled to be invited to share my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you for accepting our invitation. We are also happy to have you on the platform tonight. Uh, Mr. Coffey, you are welcome. You want to introduce yourself?
And I just wanted to say thank you for not putting our honorable business to my name. I was just reading your lips there to say that.
I was ready to say it.
I wonder she's going to say. I wonder she was going to say. She was going to say honorable, but anyway, yeah. So my name is Alex. Like Mr. I'm also I was former head of the Financial Intelligence Unit of Liberia, the FIU for short. So we all share the former together, but me without the
honorable.
The honorable, yeah.
Oh boy,
that doesn't excuse you.
You are still, yes.
I think it was an inadvertent error, Alex.
I typed my in there now, so.
Yeah. But tonight, while we await Mr. Jensen, we're gonna be, we just start off because we're already on set. We want to go in depth. We're talking about the budget. The executive branch of the Liberian government has submitted a proposed national budget, and that budget is what all the experts tonight will be dissecting. They're going to be tearing that budget apart tonight. So it's something that I know the rest of us look forward to. For me, in the background, but I'm still looking forward to hear what you guys have to say as it concerns the budget. So I just want the Honorable Kamara just to give us his opening remark as it concerns that budget.
Thank you. Thank you. To begin with, it's just to say this the proposed national budget for 2022, I would say it's a new budget. All right, it's different from previous years' national budget, such that it has a new counting period. The old counting period prior to 2022 counted our national budget in 2 different years. The first half of the fiscal year will start from July 1 to December of a given year, and the second half from January to June. So counting wise, we as Liberia, we stood out in the context of the rest of the 50 member countries in West Africa. All right, so there was a call to realign our budget year to the rest of the ECOWAS bloc, such that all of the 14 members countries, they run from January to December. Liberia was the only one running a unique fiscal calendar from July of one year to June of another year. And thanks to the ministry, thanks to the minister, thanks to the president, that Liberia finally, we've reached a point where we have harmonized and aligned with the rest of the sub-region. That is important to give context to the conversation around this proposed budget. So when I say new, it is new in terms of a realignment to a new counting period that is run from January to December. And that's something we want to note. That is an achievement, because when I served as Minister of Finance, when I served at the central bank, every time we attended regional meetings, the issue came up: Liberia, when will you realign with the rest of the regional member countries? At least 2022 sets that record, and it's something that we must commend current administration for. Also, we want to note that the background of this budget comes in an environment that is pandemic related. We are all facing the COVID environment, which impacted on all economies of the world. And as such, it impacted on the growth. So as long as economic growth is affected, it affects revenue generation of the government, thus constraining the fiscal space in which they will be able to meet competing expenditure pressure. That said, we're coming from a background where 2 successive years, 2019 and 2020, Liberia experienced economic recessions, where our growth rate declined by 2.5% in those respective years. This year, it is estimated that we should be growing around 3.2%, hopefully. But given the fact that COVID still persists with different strains, different variants, the implication as to whether the economy now is experiencing such recovery, that is left to the experts who are on grounds, who are managing the economy from the perspective of the Ministry of Finance and the central bank. So that is the picture. So we want a new realignment of the fiscal year, coming out of economic recessions into a new fiscal period proposed for 2022. A budget size of 785.6 million is something that we will say is a feat, all right? Because this is the first time after decades, I would say 2 decades, and up to the point where I said the size of government budget hadn't risen above 600 million. So going to 785.6 million is something that we say, man, it's an achievement. However, this is a projection, all right? So the context in which we are going to be having our perspective as to how this is going to be achieved, what could be potential constraint that may not allow it to be realized. So we'll be giving our perspective. So these will just be my initial statements as regards the proposed budget.
Thank you so much. We want to come to I need to add the honorable Coffee.
Please do.
Honorable Coffee, your opening remarks.
If you want me to not answer you or leave your show, then you must put a honorable there. Just call me Alex.
All right, Alex. Alex.
Yeah, thank you, Burma, for that intro. It's important that that Burma noted those things, and also to state the fact that the budget was also delivered in a timely manner, and that at least allow for discussion. And let me say hello to everybody in Radio Land, everybody in Liberia, or in America, every part of the world. Say hi to them. But it's important to note what Burman just said, and in addition to that, to note that the budget came, in a timely manner, and that allowed time for discussion. And now, right now, as we speak, the legislature is especially the Senate is debating the budget. I listened to a session today, and the budget is being debated, especially from the revenue side, with regards to the metal steel, which form a important part of the revenue increases. Besides the loans that will be borrowing, the money that will be borrowing from World Bank and IMF, but metal steel concession, the expansion of metal steel, also play an important role. So that document is being debated, whether they should rectify that concession, that new expansion concession agreement, or they should not. So that is being discussed right now. So some of the things that we are doing is to provide some meaning to how the budget looks like, and how maybe pointing the legislature in a direction as to what to look for in a budget. And some of our interest is the question we continue to ask ourselves is that, yes, the budget has increased, which is a feat. And, many schools of thought, many people have been talking about, whether politician or economists have been talking about increasing our budget to 1 billion, or, following the trend of Rwanda, countries that came from war, but we're still lacking behind. So it's a great feat. But then let's look at whether these increases in the budget numbers are sustainable, bearing the fact that our economy is based on the extractive industry, especially now. It's just the iron ore industry, and it's one company. And whether these things are sustainable, in the medium term and looking forward. And another school of thought is, yes, the budget is increasing, but where are these increasing numbers going on the expenditure side? Is it going to the welfare of the people? Is it going to benefit the people, or is it following the same budget trend from year to year? Where it benefits more of the public sector, which includes the legislative and the executive for the most part. So these are some of the things that we're trying to give meaning to in this discussion. But once again, it's a good thing that our budget is increasing. It's a good thing that we've moved to a calendar year. It's a good thing that the budget was submitted on time, allowing for debate.
Thank you so much. I'll turn you over to Mr. Jensen.
But you're not going away, patient. You have to be with us, okay? Before I go deep into the discussion, let me ask the two of you, and I would like Honorable Kamara to answer first. Budget formulation is a very important issue. And my experience showed that budget in the period of 3 months to 6 months, you should be able to get in contact with land agencies and ministries, so that those agencies and ministry will submit a proposed budget. They project what they think about their agencies or ministries or institutions. And Burma, since you've been into government, you have occupied this position before. I'm worried if this $786 million came directly from those land ministries and agencies in terms of formulation of this figure.
I would rather respond in this way. Such a question would suggest the process right, that leads to the final draft.
Right.
So usually prior to the commencement of the fiscal year, in the context of the law, there should be a call for submission.
Right.
That submission simply means all ministries and agencies will submit their individual budget relative to what they expect to spend on in the coming fiscal year.
Right.
And after that submission, there is an appearance. All right. You will appear at the Ministry of Finance to discuss on that submission. And after which time, that submission will inform the drafting of what I perceive. I would think that that was the process leading up to this draft submission for fiscal year 2022. So as long as the call is made, ministries and agencies, they will send in the controllers and they come in at the Ministry of Finance at the budget section. You will present and we discuss, and it's accepted as a draft submission. And then the technicians cross the entire senior management from directors, involving all staff for that matter. I will not only say directors, whether analysts or director or assistant minister. So everybody forms part of the team that will inform the drafting process. And that helps to put in lines, okay, according to ministries and agency. And when that is done, a thorough review is made. The minister sitting at the senior management meeting with the deputy minister, assistant minister, directors at the senior management call meeting, look into the submission, and once an agreement is made in terms of what was submitted, but I will interject, prior to that conversation of a call for submission, the fiscal outturn across ministries and agencies must have been submitted to know exactly how you manage on what you spend, so you account for what was given you.
Right.
And that should justify why should we give you X amount now or even try to increase it. But another thing I want to say about this budget, the context in which, again, the newness of this budget is now exit from just line item budgeting towards a program-based budgeting. So a program-based budgeting is that which is costed along programs line, and you must achieve the programs that you have outlined. And my prayer is, going into 2022, this budget will require all, not just only the ministries and agencies of government, but across all sectors of the public space, from the executive to the judiciary to the legislature. Everybody will have to account now on the basis of programs that you are undertaking and you are spending the public's money.
And so before you continue, the reason why I started with the budget formulation process, the timing in which the budget appeared to the legislative branch of government was, in my view, very hasty. Why do I say that? We followed development in Liberia. The July to December 31st budget was proposed and submitted to the House of Representatives. They have decided, look, there must be a budget performance report. They requested the president to submit a budget performance report. That's how they sent the July 1st to December 31st budget back to the executive branch of government. Hence, we, the public, we were expecting that budget to appear to the legislative branch of government with the budget performance report. Instead, we saw this 786 million budget that appeared. So what gets in our mind is that, was this budget expected, or we were expecting the July to December 31st budget? Howbeit, up to this time, someone was still following up that event. We get incredible information that July to December 31st budget was passed, even though the process involving that July 1st to December 31st budget, expenditure aspect was already in process. The budget appeared in September, the July to December budget. So then the question of the formulation process of the 786 million is where we try to understand, or we hope that you people, the expert, will be able to give us some idea so that the public will get to know. I mean, because if we want to look at the realisticness of the budget, we must see the line item, the line ministry, the agencies, whether they were really into what you just explained, whether they were called to the Ministry of Finance and they presented their proposals and those things were captured, and then the ministry tried to fine-line it into a national budget.
Jensen, I would say I think that was the process followed, in my estimation, because certainly for an individual to sit down and just write numbers, and to just corroborate that process, after that conversation takes place at the level of the Ministry of Finance, during this current review process of the budget debate, every ministry and agency, you are going to appear at the legislature to state, are you aware this is what you submitted to the Ministry of Finance? So
very well.
There is that second layer of confirmation. So that I think it will answer itself. All right. So we can belabor this point. And I would just say the second layer of confirmation is now through this ongoing budget year. And so certainly the ministry and agency will speak for themselves, and they will be able to confirm, yes, we are aware of the number, and then justify. If they are aware of that number, then they should justify why should they receive such allotment within the budget.
Okay,
and
Mr.
so
Mr. Minister,
let me just interject as well.
Yeah.
Let me just interject as well. It's important that Burma spoke about the performance report, and Jensen, you were asking about the budget performance report, because when that budget call is being done, ceilings are also sent, right?
Right.
So, for example, and that ceiling is based on the revenue envelope, the projection within the revenue. So on the expenditure side, because most of the entities are, they're spending agencies. So on the expenditure side, for example, so goods and salaries will be capped as this amount based on the performance of the previous years. So your salary will be this amount, so that you will not go above, hiring people left and right.
Right.
So if your salary numbers was 200,000 last year, possibly it's going to be 200,000 or a little more or less, depending on the situation. But you're not going to just send payroll numbers if you wish to, because if you want to hire another 100% as you wish to know. And also, then the rest of the expenditure, goods and services, travel means, and other things will also be, you'll also be given a ceiling. So if your total budget is 300,000, for example, and 200,000 of that is salary, that will be capped as 200,000, and the balance 100,000 will go towards everything else. So you can send a budget after you've given a ceiling of 300,000. You cannot send a budget for 500,000, for example.
That's good.
It's during that hearing that adjustment could be made, but note that what we say we'll collect, we project to collect, is what we're supposed to spend in fund accounting. So that means in order to increase your budget from 300,000 to 350, for example, we have to take that money from somewhere, some other entity, to give it to you. So during that budget hearing period within the ministry, there's a back and forth, there's a debate. So sometimes it's difficult to even get your budget increased sometimes. I know we ran behind Burma when we were.
So, Jensen, in essence,
yeah,
the decision to increase or not to increase, there's a general context. If we are in a constrained fiscal environment and there are fiscal rules, obviously it limits the extent that from one budget year to another budget year, especially, let's take, for example, if there was some form of harmonization across ministries and agencies aligning salaries.
Right.
And knowing that, oh yeah, we're coming out of recession, certainly, are we talking about employing more staff, or we want to retain the existing staff and build on from there? So several things goes into that in determining, and it has to do again with the performance of a given sector.
Right.
If it is a revenue generating sector, say for example, LRA, and they justify that they need to acquire maybe 10 more staff or 20 more staff, and that addition of $1 more spent on hiring a staff will give us 10 times in revenue return, then we take such a decision. So several things goes into it.
Okay, I think the two of you are on course relative to this subject, and the budget formulation process is the cardinal issue here for most of the for the people of Liberia. We will talk detail into that, and I like the way Burma puts it, that there is a second layer, meaning there must be confirmation at the legislative branch of government, where those line ministries and agencies will be called to defend what is in the national budget. We hope to see that. And we hope that there will be a robust public hearing on this quote-unquote first-time huge budget for Liberia. Yeah, but let's look at the revenue aspect of the budget. I'm sure you both have looked at the budget that is being proposed. How do you look at the revenue aspect, Honorable Minister?
For me, I would take it that there's nothing new that has happened in this budget.
Okay.
Nothing new in the sense that, is there any difference in the sources of revenue projection? An increase in external resources of funds coming from the IMF and World Bank, is it new? No, it's not new.
Okay.
Okay, receiving rapid credit facility from the IMF, okay, in the tune of 80 million. Have we received more than 80 million before? Yes, we have received more than 80 million, and especially during Ebola. All right. Okay. Okay. So, so there is nothing new, but the extent to which the increase has taken place. So this is the first budget in terms of reaching 785.6 million. All right. Composition. In terms of increase in international trade tax.
Mr. Minister, let me call you out. There is something new, and I gave you this example.
No, Jensen. No, Jensen.
Yeah, Mr. Minister, I just want to add up to, maybe you can continue your trend. Like for the president of Liberia, the president's office, he was receiving nearly $3 million. Now for this budget, is being projected about $6 million. That's
but Jensen, let me also hold you there, because you're going to the expenditure side. We're talking about revenue.
Yeah. Let's end the trend of thought on the revenue side.
Okay, go ahead.
And you asked me, is there anything new?
Right.
Could we even have reported 1 million? It's possible to report 1 million on the revenue side. Okay. So the source of increases coming from the external resources of 145 million, that's accounting for this growth towards the 785.6 million. International trade tax collection, a subset of which will be collection of import and custom duties. Are they new sources of revenue generation? No, they are not new, but yet they are going to be the lead drivers in the increase in revenue projection. So from external sources, you're going to have an increase of 107 million, moving from 38 million in the previous fiscal year to 145 million, an increase of 107 million. That's the major driver. This next in line is international trade tax. So an increase in custom duties and other levies, is that something new? No, it's the same old model of revenue generation. This time around, you're going to be moving from around 169 million to 227 million, an increase by 58 million. That's a driver. You come to income and property income tax. Moving from 65 million to 129 million, that's a driver. And then it is expected that they will introduce an increase in GST tax to 11%. That will be a potential driver of an increase in the revenue envelope in terms of projection. And also an additional layer of tax that will be introduced will be $25 per passenger. That will be on your airport tax in terms of travel. So these are the major sources of drivers for this growth in the total size of the envelope of around 785 million. So when I say it is nothing new, it is nothing new because we have not gone to other identification of critical sectors that could add to our revenue base. Okay. If you tell me, say, okay, we have discovered tourism as a sector in which we are going to expect X amount of $1 million coming into the revenue, then it becomes a new source of revenue.
Okay.
And if you ask me, are we trying to introduce some fiscal relief and incentive, say, to the special economic zone across the bridge, where we're looking for the development of firms that will come in and open factories. Right. So if you say there will be an introduction into the special economic zone of 10 factories or 5 factories from which we'll expect to collect this revenue, then as a new innovation to the budget process in terms of revenue generation. So when I say it is nothing new, that's where I come from. So we stay sticking to the same reliance on the increase sector. Yeah.
Mr. Minister, by that standard, does it mean that this budget is not achievable? The 786 million.
If what is to come in from the IMF World Bank comes true, and the projection from international trade taxes should come true, however, there's a caveat. International trade tax is not a standalone action because it borders on the global economy. If the global economy, take for example, now the potential of a risk to this budget could be Omicron, for which there will be, there will be, but they are already imposition of restriction on travels across nations. All right. All right. So there are.
Okay, let's see, Alex.
That could be implication for the realization. So if you ask him, I would say on one end, should the environment improves, that's less restrictive in terms of movement of goods and services. And in our case, our reliance on the port of entry, say Freeport, the Buchanan port, if there will be restriction on the movement of vessels from Europe, from America, from which we collect those proposed allocations in the budget from the perspective of the custom and excise taxes, yes, those are risks in terms of realization.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. So, Alex, we pose the same question to you. How do you see the revenue aspect of this budget? And from what Burma have said, I know you all want to be very diplomatic and be very careful what you say here, but I think I'm getting like the projection is a tough game for the government comes 2022. What do you think about the revenue aspect?
Yeah, James, it's not an issue of being diplomatic. It's an issue of professionalism.
Right.
Okay. When you're a professional, you're a professional. You're not a politician, so to speak.
Right.
In this presentation, we put on our professional hats and we remove our political and other hats. All right. So we must, have a discussion in that direction. So now let me look at some of the like Burma started, but some of the areas that one of the other areas that he spoke about the loan side, which is a major driver. He started talking about taxes on international trade. He spoke a little bit about taxes on goods and services with the 11% increase. One of the other areas is taxes on income and profit. So what we're saying is what the key question is, yes, the budget is based on the same revenue sources. The budget template is the same. Technically, nothing has changed on the budget template. But what is changing is the numbers have moved upward.
Okay.
That means, or that suggests that there is something differently that will be done, right? For example, if you talk about tax increase on taxes on income and profit, some of the question is, because when you talk about income, meaning taxes on the profit, the income of companies,
corporate income taxes.
Okay, companies that are operating in the country, right? The question is, are there more companies coming in that more profit taxes will be made on? Then when you come to income taxes is largely PAYE, pay as you earn. That suggests that there will be increases in the number of employees, because right now there's two things: you're broadening the tax base, or you're increasing the tax rates. Okay. So if it comes to import duty, you're either increasing the import duties or you're broadening the base. Broadening the base means you are employing more people that you will be taxing. So that means more taxes. Broadening the base means you will be increasing the number of companies. Now, in the case of taxes, taxes on income and profit, we know that metal steel will be expanding. All right.
Okay.
As in previous MDA or whatever, in previous agreement, they said it will be increasing the number of employees. They'll be hiring 3,000 more people. Even though that did not happen in the previous agreement, they said they were going to hire 3,000 people, and they hire only 2,000 people, according to information from the legislature.
Okay.
So if they are projecting to hire 3,000 people more, that means taxes on income will increase because there are more people. So if Metal Steel was paying, say, 100,000 on taxes on people's income that were paying them, that means they will increase it to maybe 400,000 or million. We're talking about million. So that accounts for some of the projected increases in profit. But the question still remains that the quantum of increase is not only associated with Metal Steel.
Right.
Okay.
And so, if I may catch you there, you just said that, and there's no secret. Liberia, we all monitor what is going on in Liberia. There are no new companies coming in Liberia as of today's date. Metal Steel employing 3,000 more persons. You have young people who are graduating from universities for the past 5-10 years, and some of them are aging and there's no job, although you don't want to go into politics. But the purpose of coming here to discuss the numbers and also match that with, like you earlier said in your opening statement, the people's concern. So when we're talking about budget, while you're discussing the figures, we also want to be looking at, what is in there for the people. Like companies coming, the people will have more jobs, there will be more income taxes and those kinds of stuff. But since there are no more companies coming to Liberia, is this budget realistic? And I'm going to be asking you to put this question because that's the crux of this issue.
Jensen,
Burma,
the question about whether realistic or not, in the context of what is proposed,
right?
The 785.6 million, just to piggyback on the non-tax component, if you just go to page XR, that is Roman number 11 of the budget, on a non-tax, you have something there, the line item 142 that says administrative fees. It is projected to around 18.2 million. Mining is around 79 million, a slight increase. And then if you should look at a raw fund is around 26.3 million that is to be collected. So those are the components that drive in this non-tax revenue component of the budget. All right. And the question is, if you don't collect, say, 18 million or whatever the amount that is to be collected from Metal Steel in terms of royalty for 2022, if it does not obtain in 2023, 2024, then what happens? Then it comes back to the concern of Alex. Are we trying to woo in additional investment into our enclave sector, or we have been burned out? And if we have been burned out, then the risk into the future is a concern.
Okay, that's good. Well, let's continue with Alex. You were in speech when Bowman wanted to interject.
Yeah, come again with the question.
We're still asking, is this budget realistic? Since there are no more companies coming to Liberia, Metal Steel is is expected they will employ 3,000. Liberia is about 5 million, almost 5 million persons. Young people are in the numbers, anxious to find jobs, and those things are not happening. You have 786 million projected. Is this budget realistic?
Well, you can speak to it being realistic or not being realistic. You can only talk about the potential risk of it not being achieved or achievable, and how to mitigate the risk.
And that's what we want to hear. What is the risk associated with this budget?
Yeah, I think Burma started on those lines. One of the risks is which may not happen. One of the major risks is because if you talk about property income that Burma was talking about, a major component of that is the royalties and rent, which Metal Steel contribute. So why it is true that it will not, I would use the word will not happen. What's the potential of the legislature not ratifying the Metal Steel deal? Okay, so maybe that risk is slim.
Okay.
So that may not happen. Or what is the possibility of they calling for some adjustment in that deal? For example, we are talking about the railway being, given to them, sort of, right? So, and there is our property that's been turned over to them. What is the risk that there may be a debate on that, and there may be some adjustment downwards? So that will bring some of the numbers down. Now, we still had COVID hitting us. What is the possibility? Because if you look at one of the things that is assured, right, is assured is taxes on goods and services. There will be an increase, the proposed increase to 11%. What are the risks that the legislature may say, no, they will be too high? They may lead to hardship on the people, right? So because if you increase the goods and services tax, goods and services tax is goods you sell, there's several taxes on that.
So when you go to a restaurant, put in simple terms, at least when you go to a restaurant, you buy.
You go to it will increase. Tax. If you go to the Kobo, you go eat. Meaning that the Kobo shop money, the price you pay for a bowl of rice will go up.
Yeah.
And people will complain.
The legislature understand that. They may say, oh, no. We already in hardship. This will be additional toll on the people. So we will not allow this thing to increase.
Okay.
All right. If you look at international trade, import duties, are we expanding the base or what are we doing? What is the possibility that it may not happen? What is the possibility that even if it does happen, what's the possibility, if the legislature asks the question, what's the possibility that these things that we are increasing might lead to increase in the prices of goods, might lead to inflation, right? So let's take a look at it. Let's step back, right? But there's a positive part to it which I will come to, right? So
what is that positive aspect?
Yeah. So what is that possibility that these things not happening? Okay. What other investment are we looking at besides the metal steel? I don't know. Okay. Now, the positive aspect to that is broadening the tax base could mean also that the government is giving a lot of waivers, right? For example, even if you're not increasing the number of companies, the number of foreign direct investment into the country, but there are existing companies that enjoy a lot of incentives. There's a possibility that the government may want to renegotiate those incentives or call off some of those incentives, some of the ones that are really not into law or being into in agreement. For example, if you look at if you go to the National Investment Commission, most of the companies that are open just to attract foreign direct investment, they are giving incentives such as tax holidays and all that stuff, right? So, there's a possibility that the government may come in and say, we're removing all the incentives. We are moving all these tax holidays. So 10 companies, for example, who because of the tax holiday are not paying $1 million or $2 million each may bring that money on. But there's also a risk. I know, for example, because when I did some work with they're doing business in Liberia, some of the companies actually moved out of Liberia to neighboring countries because it was cheaper for them to do business in those countries and export the goods to Liberia. It was cheaper. So if you start knocking on those removing those incentives from those companies and removing those tax holidays, there's a possibility that they may fall up and go to neighboring countries.
Okay, Alex.
So another thing.
Just a minute, Bama.
Another
go ahead, Alex.
Occasion that is there gotta be vigorous tax audits.
Okay.
They gotta be vigorous tax audit, and I'm not talking from the audit side, but I'm talking from when I was head of the FIU. The FIU helped and still have the potential to help LRA identify some areas where companies are hiding their money from the tax bracket. Millions of dollars are being shielded from the tax bracket, right? If the government can empower the FIU to go in, not just the audit.
I'm not cutting you off. If I'm right, the FIU don't seem to have a budget in this year. I'm not too sure if I'm right on that, but from my own observation on the budget proposal that was sent me, the FIU seems not to have any line item that I saw.
No, the FIU has a line item. In fact,
have a line item.
The FIU budget has almost been doubled. It's moved from I think 800,000 last year to 1.5 million or so.
Okay, we'll verify that. But Bama, you wanted to say something before I come to you.
I'm not sure the figures, but it's been increased.
Okay, all right. We'll come right back. Bama, can we look at the expenditure aspect now, since time is fast spent of this budget? Bama, we can hear you. Apparently, you are muted.
Before we go to the expenditure side, just to say, in addition to some potential downside risk, when you're coming out of economic recession, is this timing right to talk about increase in tax?
Okay.
So the timing should be a concern, because out of economic recession, you want to stimulate growth in the economy, then you will rather anticipate what we call an expansionary fiscal policy that says you reduce tax to give more incentive for investment. So reduce tax and increase spending. So that will be the ideal thing to do coming out of economic recession, and especially in our case, two successive, 2019 and 2020. So the projection of 3.2 for this year, the question is, even now, if you go to assess performance from January to now, the question is, are we close to realizing 3.2% rate of growth? However, it is also important to note that the budget itself, of the total taxes expected to be collected on a trade, 492.2 million, 407 of which, that is 87%, is going to be collected in US dollars. And the balance in US dollar, in Liberian dollar denoted, is 17.08 billion that is going to be collected in Liberian dollars. So you're talking about close to around 12% in local currency and almost 90% in US dollar. Again, the issue about putting pressure on the domestic economy exchange rate is a concern. You are now talking about collecting 17 billion in local currency and also collecting 3.9 billion in non-trade tax. So the total projected for 2022 in terms of Liberian dollars that is supposed to be in circulation to meet the demand for government tax collection, at least 42 billion, the central bank must prepare itself. So as an expert, as an advice, I hope that complementarity existed to inform the central bank. You're talking about issuing 4 billion, 5 billion, but on the aggregate level, are you prepared to meet this 42 billion demand on Liberian dollar core in terms of taxes that is to be collected by the government? So that's another side to the coin. And because if you don't position yourself for such market demand, especially coming from the government, then it's going to have implication for exchange rate pressure.
Okay, central bank must prepare itself for the challenges that may come in in this 706 proposed budget. I was
James,
asking
James, maybe you like this. Maybe you like to hear this one too.
Yeah, please.
Probably they can also do something about this whole duty-free privileges that they're giving to a lot of people and a lot of the legislature. Yeah. So because millions of dollars are left on the table from the duty, instead of increasing these things, increasing that thing. Okay, so maybe they need to look into bringing some of the CTN millions on the budget. Maybe they need to bring some of the, even though it's temporary, but they need to bring some of the $75 that they collect at the airport in the budget.
So, Ishan, are you calling on the government to take away the duty-free privileges, that is given members of the legislature?
They should streamline it. They should enforce it properly.
Okay, enforcement.
They should enforce it properly. I'm not saying that there are people who are entitled to some level of duty-free. For example, if you are a returning Liberian and you're going for the first time, you could be entitled to some, duty-free for one time, one off to a certain extent.
Okay.
A legislature may be entitled to something if it's directly related to the people or is for from a non-profit or from something like that. But the way it is being done, it is. I'm not saying they should wipe it out totally, but they should enforce it properly.
I would ask, what is even wrong to take away the duty-free privileges of lawmakers and then increase what you call the revenue base of the country? I mean, whatever you have, you keep it for other purposes instead of lawmakers are getting huge amount. And I don't know whether we have the time to go into some of these figures, but let's go strictly into the expenditure aspect of this budget, just for a few words, and then we have a few questions here which we would like to ask directly. But let's talk. Wema, how do you look at the expenditure aspect of the budget?
Well, we see increases in some sectors. That's good, but I would say what I found and still continue to be a problem, not only unique to this government, to this administration, but from previous administration, even when I served as Minister of Finance. The thing is that when we're talking about increase on the expenditure side, is it on tangible, viable economic returns projects?
Right.
Or we still talking on, we are just increasing, say, goods and services. We are increasing operating expense line. We are increasing salaries, compensation. Right. And that's still the picture I do see. And it's a concern for me.
I have similar concern like you.
All right.
Do you have any recommendation for this expenditure aspect? Do you see any line item that you think that you can suggest for me?
In addition to what the call that Ellis struck,
I
will re-echo that call for unison.
Okay.
Where we find ourselves now, it is a critical moment in the economic recovery of our country. In difficult times, you got to make some difficult decisions.
Sure.
To make it better. And then when you get back to winning ways, then you can adjust accordingly. So in a period where the fiscal space is tight, our international partners are coming to help us. Thanks to COVID-19, we're receiving up to 145 million from the international partners and could be even more. What sacrifice are we willing to make as a government, as a people, to across the executive, across the legislature, and to some extent the judiciary? I say this is a call. This should be a new day that we must now begin to make the patriotic call and make the sacrifice. As an example, if you look in the budget, from the perspective, say, of our representative, the representative of the people. So Alex said, okay, can we revisit and see the extent to which duty waivers can be readjusted in a way that at least you can have some revenue space. The other thing I would want to say, can we also make the sacrifice? Say, let's take, for example, the legislature, 105 person in the legislature. They are receiving in the proposed budget, they are expected to get $11.53 million for elected officials.
Right.
And just oppose that with the civil servants who are just in the legislature as an example. All right. That is 1,700 plus staff. They are attracting 14.25 million.
So true.
See. So I'm saying it's a possible, and certainly that's my recommendation, that if we can call for the patriotic sons of the soil, the representative of the people. Let's start from there. Can you say, okay, in this new budget, since it's a new budget, a new calendar year, we want to start anew everything. Can this each receive, say, at most 5,000? When you do 5,000 Gen Z and you calculate times 105, it comes to 525,000, less of a million. That means you have almost 11 million plus left that can be reallocated, for example, say to agriculture. Agriculture, a critical sector such as agriculture, the budget has 8.5 million, of which 5.8 million is going to be on compensation, wages, and goods and services. That means you have less than 3 million. On what can 3 million make
do for agriculture projects?
For agriculture. So is it possible that we can begin the process of reformation of the budget and say, okay, we'll make that sacrifice, we'll take 5,000 each, and then reappropriate 11 million plus to critical sector, to education, say
that's
to agriculture.
That's a general call, Honorable Minister, that members of the legislative branch of the Liberian government will not begin to see themselves, be prepared to sacrifice for the nation to reduce
and that's just from the legislature, Jensen.
Right.
So look at the executive side too.
Okay.
As critical a time period. So can we say, Mr. President, probably have a conversation with the legislature and the judiciary, bring all parties to the table. When people, this is the time our country needs us. Let's make the sacrifice. Mr. President will say, okay, for my budget, I cut this amount. Legislature say, for my budget, I take this amount out. And let's
I was telling you that the president's budget, I was looking at the previous budget, and that was almost a $3 million, but right now it's going to $6 million. So your call is genuine, and if they really want this government to be a people's government, they need to do the honorable thing right now to make some sense.
Because the backdrop, Johnson, the backdrop for that call, if we get 11 million from legislature, say maybe we can get maybe close to 8 to 10 million, the same amount from the executive, and say maybe judiciary not much, say maybe let's take 2 or 3 million. If you can just get something around, say 20 million, then that 20 million could go, say, let's try to invest in tourism.
Right.
That the road that leads from Morovia to Cape Mount, where you have Lake Piso, you have suffering opportunity. When you develop that road, it's going to all by itself attract people to go there with ease, less transportation costs, real time in terms of access, and it's going to bring revenue return from tourism. That's just the low-hanging fruit. What's the other side can we look at? Can we look at in agriculture? Can we then begin to develop, say, the cocoa or the coffee industry?
Right.
That some of the chocolate we are eating imported. Can we then begin to just say make in Liberia too? Start from somewhere. So I'm just saying, if the economic order does not change from consumption, which is the case from year in, year out, from one administration to another administration, we have to now think outside of the box and make meaningful changes, and that has to be reflected in the budget. So Ellis alluded to Rwanda. In the same period that we experienced war, that's the same period Rwanda experienced is genocide. And I went back looking at how Rwanda has performed, that their fiscal budget size from the same period 2005, Alex, to 2019, Rwanda grew its budget from 500,000 to 8 billion.
Wow.
But Liberia, we're celebrating 785.6 million. I would say we need to work harder, and it can only be done when we begin to re-diversify or re-look at the way we do business in terms of the economy. We got to go to economic diversification. We got to allow for incentive for investment opportunity that will bring factories, and let's do a new order. That's why I then say, then when you begin to project in the revenue, 1 billion budget size, we can even go, Alex, in less than 3 to 5 years, we can go over 2 billion in our budget size. Should we begin to do business different?
Okay, so Alex, you also have a view of this expenditure. I'm sure you have looked at the budget. You see the size, the revenue, matching that with the expenditure. What is your take on all of these things? Making sacrifices. Do you think the lawmakers, the president, the ministers should sacrifice to meet this goal?
I would tell Burma, the foreign minister, that his friend, but the president is my friend.
Yeah, I mean, I was wondering why you even left the government in Kimasala in the state when you should be helping jobs here.
So the president is my friend. So I will feel free to talk to the president, right?
Okay, all right.
So before Burma, on a serious note, you're talking about the president calling a roundtable with the legislature and all that stuff. But before you take an action, right? They say before you pick the coal in my eye, you must pick the coal in your own eye.
Right.
Look at the president's own budget from the executive side.
Right.
Every budget has an objective. Is this budget swaying this country this way? Is it propelling the proper agenda? Is it serving the people? Or it is intended for something coming in 2 years?
Right.
So if you look at some of the figures, if you do the accounting, somehow you think the office of the president is getting from here, there, about 10 million or more, right? The office of the president is saying there are a lot of increases. There's some money put in, some money put into going on county tour.
Yeah.
There's some money, list budget has been increased. Yeah, list for community empowerment and stuff like that. But these, we all know that these are, these pet presidential projects. And what's the direction of these things? All right. We saw in past year where certain rules were built for certain reasons.
So do you think the president budget must be reduced, Alex? Send out your friend.
Before you pick the quote from my eye, you must pick the quote from your own eye before you call the legislature. And also, as Burma said it will appear as though the legislature were giving this sweetener so that they can pass the budget. Because they are getting a piece of the pie, including the new vehicles were going to be purchased for them. We agree that, yes, their vehicles may have been old, they have not bought vehicles for some time, but like Burma said, it's time for a calling. It's time for all to make sacrifice in the face of unemployment, in the face of suffering, in the face of trying to achieve the proper agenda. Why we should be buying cars when cars are already moving? Why we should be buying a fleet of cars? That's money to save. In addition, then to them reducing their salaries to a reasonable amount that will allow these monies to be moved to other direction. So we are talking about moving the budget by more than 200 million. That amount should now talk about some of the things maybe we want to do, the tourism thing that he's talking about. Maybe we want to do something that will benefit the people, right? But we are moving these monies into areas that are more political than developmental or benefit.
And bear in mind, Alex, just to throw something else there. There's 80 million that comes from the IMF. It's a loan. It's not free. We'll pay back.
And that will definitely obligate the future generation of our country. If you're taking loan at this time to increase this budget and divide the pie with government officials, the burden shift to young Liberians who are expected to handle the country tomorrow. But let's look at
if you look at the budget. Let me add this one. If you look at the budget, there are some entities whose budget have increased a lot. We who have the eyes to see, we know the reasons why these monies are put there. That bucket take it through, you put it there, you take it out. You put it there, you take it out. Right. And also, a lot of times, all these goods and services that are even put into these other entities, sometimes they hardly get these monies besides their salaries. They hardly get these monies. So these monies, and the government has a policy where 60% of the revenue is capped for salary.
And that brings us back, Ellie, that brings us back to the question.
So many entities
the budget formulation,
get their goods and services money.
Yeah, that's what I said.
That's money goes to all these different areas.
Not the formulation, Jensen, but rather the performance of the budget.
The performance of the budget,
the allocation.
Because let's say, for example, if you had Ministry of Information, all right, that submitted a budget that is not to what is being projected, or whatever you call the first figure that is submitted to them to work within. A minister who's sitting there with his team will definitely, guard those ministries and agency to make sure the sacrifice is made.
Right.
Unlike what we've seen. I mean, I'm not an accountant, but my low bookkeeping knowledge, I see some figures in this budget. I just, if I have my own will, I would think that, look, the first thing, as you said, like the president need what? From 3 million, almost 3 million to 6 million. I will ask the legislative branch of government, is this the time to sacrifice for Liberian? You have bad roads in the country. You have young people are in the place, no job, and you have few officials, that are getting so much. They are doing well with, upholding the government. But as I will agree with the two of you that this is the time to make a sacrifice for Liberia. Other countries have done that. Why can Liberia do that at this time, the critical nature of the country? But let's look at the debt portfolio of the country. Since we look at revenue expenditure, let's look at the debt portfolio of the country, because that's one component, both domestic and external. I know time is fast spent. We may not have time to go deeper into this, but yeah, Burma, let's speak up from you. How do you look at the debt portfolio of the country?
You will recall that somehow last year, I wrote an article on life after death.
Okay. I need to find that.
The intent of that article was just to advise and profile that our debt stock has risen to over 1.5 billion, coming from 2010, when we reached hippie completion point, and we're under the low debt categorization as a country, having waved close to around 5 billion. But we're crawling back gradually again into debt distress. And it's a concern between 2010 and 2018, 2019. If we have moved from around 200 million to over 1.5 billion, the question is, when we look back and ask ourselves, on what have we spent? On what can we show? And the call was, should we acquire any new debt going forward into the future, so that we are not kicking the cans down to a next generation to take on a burden of debt?
Right.
So the question is, are we doing more and significant investment in roads that will have significant economic returns? Are we doing more investments in the quality of education, where we're sending more teachers back for maybe master program in different fields, PhDs in different fields? Do we have a set program in terms of the human resource base being strengthened? Are we talking about going into agriculture? That can be a place where job creation, especially for the youthful population, 60% of the population dynamics, the demographics, is saying we're having a lot of young people who need to be employed. So where is the role of the private sector? So I'm saying, if we take it on new loan, let it be to diversify our economy. Let it be to strengthening the private sector, so that we move away from government being the largest employer to allowing the private sector to begin to take on that role. It's a pressure on government. You see, any administration that comes, everybody runs, oh yeah, find job. The public sector should be the place just to create the environment for the private sector to thrive.
I think that's a very good point. When you have the private sector creating a lot of jobs, government, the burden will be reduced from government. But it seems to be that government is the largest employer in the country. And even with that, there are factors that are interplaying. But the reason why I want us to look at the debt portfolio is that, and you rightly said it, there is a generation coming. There is a future. So if these debts, are increasing, it means Liberia is not, we all going to die and leave a country, where there will be burden, because of our past.
I hope that doesn't obtain, Jensen. I hope that will not be the case.
No, not at all.
Our generation.
I don't hope so.
Our generation will make the sacrifice, and that's why this conversation today we are having will go down on record.
Okay.
That on this 14th day of December, we are now committing ourselves as a new generation that will commit itself.
I think we have a few questions, but let's talk to Alex.
Okay. The question is asking, why did we change our fiscal year from July to that ran from July to June now to January? The reason for that is that, firstly, Liberia had to realign with the rest of the 15 members of the ECOWAS country. We were the only country that ran a fiscal year in 2 different years. All right. So our realignment puts us now into harmony for comparison purpose, for macroeconomic convergence purpose, and then for easier comparison. Say you can now compare Liberia's budget with Sierra Leone that runs the same calendar period from January to December. In addition, one could say the realignment of the fiscal year now it will reorientate even the budget as to spending, because if you have taken into consideration the seasonal dimension as to when, during which period you collect more revenue, that will inform the context in which major public sector investment projects will have to be funded. So, if you look at the new structure, from January to mid-year, we have more sunshine, and it is within the first quarter or the first half of the year that you have significant revenue generation. Around, say, the year ending December, going into January, February, March, up to June. So that means we'll have to reorientate even spending, especially on critical projects.
Okay. So Alex, let's just take a comment from you on the debt portfolio. I know time is fast spent. I know most of you have some other obligation. How do you look at the debt portfolio of Liberia?
I would defer that question to the finance minister.
Okay. Okay. He has already spoken on that. What's about budget performance report? Can we say something towards that?
Well, it's a given that it's part of the PFM law that there has to be budget performance report. In fact, it should be a basis for as part of the budget call, and it should be a basis for the legislature's reviewing the budget. That should be a condition, and in fact, it should be the government should continue to make it a condition that entities submit these, and it's in the law. Entities submit these their performance report to the Minister of Finance and even to the Auditor General for review. So it's part of it. But sometimes I look at the budget act trend. When I look at the budget act trend in the budget book for the draft budget for 2022, some of the figures leave much to be desired the way I see them.
Okay. Okay. So by that, I think there's a need for the General Auditing Commission to do a lot of work.
Not auditing per se, but as part of the portfolio for auditing, the General Auditing Commission must have that. But the point of call is the accountant and controller general is supposed to receive those reports on a quarterly basis, right? So you can't wait for at the end of the year before you scrum it. Each entity is required to make that submission by law.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
Whether it's being implemented, it's being enforced is another thing.
Okay.
And Jensen, just another layer in terms of strengthening accountability. There is something I would say the government did, but how many persons heard about this? It is in the proposed budget. If you look under the policy in terms of the administrative policy to be carried out, it is mentioned that the task force on payroll cleanup, they were able to discover 400 double dippers on the payroll, and that allowed them to have saved 1.3 million.
Okay.
So the question is, those double dippers, that means you to say health ministry, then you're taking money also say from education. Right. That's double dipping.
Right.
And that's fraud. So if you discover 400 double dippers, what did you do with them?
Right. Did you prosecute people?
Alex, you're coming from the FIU background. Wouldn't that be something that the public's supposed to hear about?
Right. Publicize that,
and you take action on those people to restitute what they double dipped.
You're right. The double dippers are fun, and this is not just today's business. It's something that is historically being discovered. But again, sometimes the double dippers find their way back. Right. yes, we and internal audit agency is its budget is increased because of these things, and the internal audit agency at some period boast of this amount of ghost name and this amount that amount of ghost names, and it's double dippers. But and then again, another set of rounds of audit is being commissioned for this payroll cleanup exercise. This is an ongoing thing. So I don't know why we keep doing payroll cleanup. It's like you go for a colonoscopy exam, and the doctor tell you, say you can only do it another 10 years. Why should you continue to do colonoscopy? Because it will take 10 years for your colon to get dirty, right? According to medical science. Why you want to do colonoscopy every year when your colon is not expected to get dirty? So it takes a period of time for these things to be done.
I think the political reason I would think is that, okay, CDC government came in the picture, and they have all of their supporters out there. So the best we can do is to get rid of some of these people who we think are, creating this problem, the double dippers. And then while you're getting rid of them, at the same time, the vacancy is there. You see the slot, then you just bring bring different group of people and just put them in this position, and they keep. So the next government that comes in, they're also going to discover probably the same 400 double dippers.
But as you are inferring, Jensen, and we cannot infer in this case. We can learn ourselves.
That's inference. That's true. This is an inference because we all understand the political dynamics of our country. Because like you said, why can the 400 double dippers be prosecuted? I will ask you that question.
And they should be.
Okay, if these people are taking pay, Minister of Finance, Education, and maybe Internal Affairs, and you have caught them, what do you do?
They should be. They should be prosecuted.
So that's the primary reason for the inference. Yeah, Alex, you were saying something.
Yeah, but let me before I come to what I wanted to say, let me ask a funny question. It like in the security force, right? You send a man to the traffic light to collect. You know he got to make report, right, to the office, right? So these things, there's a collusion, right? So sometimes it's difficult. But what I wanted to say, Jensen, is if you discover 400 double dippers, for example, if the guy is at Ministry of X and he's also at Ministry of Y, the prosecution side should happen. But if you take him from Ministry of X, yes, now you create room for other people to come to take, instead of one person double dipping, you add another 400%. It's the same salary you're going to pay. The total amount is not going to increase, but you're going to reduce unemployment, right? You're going to put bread on other people's table. So the payroll cleanup must have a social and direction, as well as a punishment direction, so that a prosecution direction, so that people will not do it, so that more people will come to be gainfully employed.
Okay, guys, I think we have gone. The time is fast spent, and let me say the national budget is a very big book, and most of you are people who understand. But there's a lot of news you guys have made, and especially making special call for government officials to sacrifice, in this difficult time of Liberia. I will want to ask, what could be your summary comment? But before then, is there any budget line that you think, from your observation, that needs not to be in the budget? Or do you make any recommendation for lawmakers while they are debating the budget to take cognizance of? And the same question will go to you earlier after Boyman has.
In terms of a parting statement, than ever before, now the time has come that Liberia, we have to make the required sacrifice to see change. If we want to grow this budget from 700 million to 1 billion to 2 billion, we have to do things different. We cannot be doing the same thing and expect to get different results.
Right.
So in my parting comment, it would simply be, this should be a call for a return to the day The Liberians, we see Liberia first. We put aside our individual differences. We put aside our individual greed and put nation first. And putting nation first means if this new budget, which now restructure a new fiscal year, everything should begin new, then it's the right timing for us to take this ongoing budget review to make that sacrifice. So I call on the president, I call on the legislature, I call on the executive, the judiciary. Everybody, you have a part to play. And that part can only be reflected in how much of your budget you will say, I can go into my operating expense. I can go into my salary. I can go into of several other gas line items if you see. And then we can reduce consumption and give greater emphasis to public sector investment projects. That means may our capital expenditure side of the budget rise. We cannot be spending 60% of our budget on wages, compensation, and on goods and services. It doesn't help. That would be my parting comment.
That's a good point. Alex?
Well, there are too many, adjustments that could be made to our budget in terms of, the space to increase the revenue. But in order to increase the revenue, we can't continue to look in the same place. We can't continue to beat on the same dog over and over. And that's what we continue to do over the years. So, and, let me break from this whole thing about, that how we've been doing it all these years, all the other people did it, so why we can do it too. No, there got to be a point where we change. All right. On the expenditure side, there's so many places we can make changes to kind of optimize this expenditure. But we can continue to say, right, if there were missed opportunities in the past, we can say, oh, we missed the same opportunities now and going forward. One of the things that some of the cardinal reasons why, George Weah became president or won the hearts of many people is because many people thought that he embodied the aspiration of the ordinary Liberian person.
It's so true.
And so, therefore, with the introduction of the Purple Agenda for Prosperity and Development, one would have think that everything in the country will be driven towards the ordinary, to bring in the poorest of the poor to the fore. And once you try to bring the poor person, the woman who's selling her grumpy, to start giving her wheeler market, the person who gets sharp will be going to store. Right. The person who gets store will be going to warehouse, to supermarket. So then, like that, you're creating a middle class and you're increasing the other people in the upper echelon. But it appears as though too much lip service is given to that. And too much politics is being played with that. And that is what I see in this budget. Rather than us directing these increases, this beautiful increase, to the benefit of the people, we are directing it to our politics. Okay. And this is why sometimes I call on, and sometimes to be a true friend to somebody, you got to speak truth to power.
So true.
I can't sugarcoat it. I can't play lip service. I'm not a sycophant. I'm a principled person that stands for. I will not beat the government. But I will not spare the rod to spoil the child.
A good point.
So I will speak to my friend always that this budget increase is okay, but I think it's heading into the wrong direction. It should have been heading towards the people. It's to be the beginning of the opportunity to spin the lives of the people.
Okay, with that said, the budget is heading in the wrong direction. If these increases are not carefully scrutinized or are not observed by the national legislative branch of government to catch some of the pattern. Well, gentlemen, it was good having the two of you today, and I think there were a lot of meaningful discussion that came from the two of you. And if the legislators will pay attention to some of these comments, they might just be serious to look at the national budget and streamline the budget to the purpose of meeting the end goal. Today has been good to have with us Alexander Coffey. He has been the former head for the Financial Intelligence Unit of Liberia, and he was the brain behind the $16 billion, correct?
The investigative report.
Yeah. And also today we have with us the former finance minister, Berman S. Kamara. Berman Kamara is a fine gentleman who knows the envelope of Liberia, or the template of Liberia, and he has spoken to truth to power. So those who are now responsible to look at the budget will say, this is it, look at it and see where we can come, and by the end of the next fiscal year, we can see success. Having said that, we want to say thank you guys for coming, and this has been 2A Radio, bringing you a special edition of the national budget of Liberia. In the background, we also want to say thanks to Patient Blair, who has been moderating, controlling the entire broadcast. So thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you, Jensen. Thank you. Thank you to Sis Patience as well.
Okay. Thank you to Sis Patient. Thank you to James.
Okay, guys, we may call you guys anytime if we have any critical question on the budget and we can't get answers. We definitely reach out to you guys. Thank you.
And thank you to the public as well.
Okay, thank you guys.
Shalom.
Yeah.